agreed to allow, we understand that lagoons are in South Huron, but to get there, they have to come through Grand Bend area. We've agreed with our partners that we'll cooperate with them in finding a route. There was some initial discussion about sharing or joint development of infrastructure, and we really, the preference is that we each retain our own independent infrastructure from one another. And we're currently working with the MOE on the design criteria and technical aspects, finalizing the site plan agreement with South Huron. And it's out for 10 years. Now, part of the process of building this facility and giving an allocation to the finery in South Bend was to undertake an EA for Zone 4, which this represents the Pinery Provincial Park that you make out, as well as the other areas along the Highway 21 corridor. And we asked the county septic building department to give us some data that they had any on the age of existing septic systems. There's what we identified early on was that the county, although it's the approval authority for septic systems, either had a lack of records or a limited number of records, did not do re-inspection, so we really didn't have good current data on the performance and the inspection of existing septic systems. So we asked them to represent, give us the data that they did have. We tried to represent it on a lot grid for the 21 corridor, but the primary focus for undertaking the EA was to service the Pinery Provincial Parks. That was the immediate needs. They wanted to go, so we undertook this to make sure that whatever we designed to service the Pinery would be capable of meeting the needs of the balance of Zone 4 if and when it ever developed or was ever brought on. So that was the importance of proceeding with that EA for Zone 4, was making sure that the design for the Pinery didn't limit us in terms of meeting the balance of needs. So just as a tool to try and give us a better handle on the age of the septic systems, because there was lots of speculation, we tried to track this over a period of septic system ages, 10, 20 years, and sort of look at it 10 years down the road. The red illustrating that as the systems age, we were going to increasingly have a challenging meeting effluent quality. As I said, primary effort was to service the Pinery Provincial Park in South Bend Estates, which was quite anxious to move at that point in time, subsequently put on hold for a variety of reasons. We also understood that it's going to be very expensive to develop the collection systems for Zones 3 and 4, and when the approval was given for us to, or funding was given for us to expand the plant facility, we were told by the powers that be at the province and federal government, come back to us when you've got your plant underway, and we'll talk to you about helping to finance your collection system, because they recognize the cost of that. So that was really put on hold so we could pursue that. In looking at Zone 3, we recognized there was a lot of homes, natural environment there. The Class 1 soils, the high water table, and its proximity to Lake Huron made it a really challenging area to address if and when we were going to address it. There's also discussions at that point in time about the province imposing a mandatory inspection program for all septic systems across the province. And that might indicate that tertiary systems might be required in the replacing of conventional systems that may exist in those areas. That mandatory inspection systems legislation only applies to the Lake Simcoe Basin at this point in time. So we're trying to anticipate what that impact would have if it was applied here. We undertook the groundwater studies, which Dr. Balke reviewed with you tonight. And again, the target was to plan for 10, 20, 30 years down the road. Public concerns, obviously, public information sessions and the public meetings that were held with respect to it. Concerns expressed were loud and clear about the cost, the timeframes, the reliability of various collection systems, the impact on the environment of those systems, and primarily was the necessity. There was a sense that there wasn't a proven need, that existing systems were not performing and were problematic. This is a map of the source water from the Source Water Protection Group, which identified almost parallels the same corridor that we're looking at for Zones 3 and 4. Is an area of concern that source water protection identified. The little circle you see up at the top of the map, right out in the lake, is the intake source for the for the London area water system and its kind of protection zone. So it just shows you the proximity of where water intakes are. There's a similar intake just up to the south, just east of the point at Kettle Point as well, which feeds the Kettle Point First Nation. We did the same mapping of the existing developments in Zone 3 and 4 in terms of what data the county could provide about the age of those septic systems. Again, it was an indicator of age and not about performance, but it gives you a parallel about what type of systems we were dealing with and the information that we had available for them. We tracked those and projected out what the impact would be 20 years as those systems age to try and define whether there's an urgency to doing something or how we would go about tackling that target. As indicated, we did the groundwater testing and did some summaries of what the data was telling us. Dr. Balke's reviewed that with you this evening. Initially we looked at a number of alternatives, or bringing servicing to zones 3 and 4, which was do nothing, because maybe there aren't indicators that substantiate the need for a collection system in those zones. There was, maybe it could be done by gravity sewers, low pressure system, a hybrid system, which is a combination of both, or some other system that we hadn't looked at. So we were looking at this issue that seemed to be coming, the headlight of an oncoming train about mandatory inspection. We looked at, in a very preliminary way, about pros and cons of gravity versus low pressure systems, and in a very general way about the costs, the impact on vegetation, the operating costs of the systems, and the proximity of pump stations, and so on and so forth. This is just an illustration of the corridor that would be required if it was a conventional gravity sewer system, and the potential tree loss that might occur in this zone. Again, I stress that it would be might. This was an illustration that Nick Verhoeven did for me about trying to quantify that. The large circle, it's reddish or pinkish color from where you're viewing, represents out of the total area that's marked out there what the tree loss would be. It doesn't mean the trees can't be replanted or you try to avoid them. The potential was that there would be that much tree loss. The blue dot represents a smaller portion. That would be the tree loss represented by the installation of a low pressure system, which is bored in or tunneled in. You can work around the trees. It has less impact on the natural environment. We also looked about talking to council about this. A big undertaking. It's going to take servicing 1,100 homes. To do it instantaneously without funding is something that they really had to think about. And so that the preliminary discussions were about how would we go about doing it. Certainly a possible phasing strategy. And this is very schematic. Please don't draw any conclusions. I think just threw it out how it possibly could be done. Timeframes are totally undefined here because it could be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years as this system builds up. I think what Nick tried to do is track the age factors of the oldest systems and build out the system in a way that could function at gravity flows or low pressure flows to gradually expand the system to cover all the areas of Zone 3, or this is Zone 3 in particular. So again, it was just conceptual. Again, some of these ages of systems, some systems are newer systems, some systems are performing, but if the infrastructure was there, the collection system would be at low pressure or gravity, people could have the ability, as they do now in the old South Top section that was serviced by the Village of Grand Bend, have the ability to have a main, or of course a trunk main outside their property on the road that they could access at such time as their septic systems were either needed a replacement or were failing. They could access the existing system. So we were looking at, is that a feasible way of doing it? There's a lot of discussion about the low pressure pumps, and we try to illustrate what those look like. I also asked Nick to kind of do a schematic about how a gravity flow system could be. So the red represents, I believe, a trunk system and the location of possible pump stations for a gravity system that could service. Green represents gravity lines that would feed, or low pressure lines that could feed if it was a hybrid system to those. We need to put in a pump station. There's substantial facilities in terms of the amount of space they take up and the impact. Given the vegetation in Zone 3, you would do